Dawn does not arrive like a promise. It seeps in slowly, as if uncertain it is welcome, thinning the night rather than breaking it. The sky remains colorless, a washed parchment stretched low over the earth. Beneath it, boots press into ground that has known too many feet and too much waiting. Mud, stiffened by frost, cracks softly under each step. The sound is small, almost ashamed of itself, nothing like the songs men imagine when they speak of war. Leather creaks. Male whispers. Breath moves in and out of chests with the dull regularity of labor. A column of soldiers advances along the road, though advance feels like too proud a word for this patient trudging. They move as one body made of many aches, many hungers, many unspoken thoughts. At the center walks a man whose name matters very little now, if it ever did. His face is half hidden beneath a male coif darkened by old sweat and rain. The iron smells faintly of rust, of pennies rubbed together, of something sour that never quite leaves. His eyes are open, watchful, but they carry no expectation. He has learned better than that. Somewhere ahead, a banner shifts on its pole. The cloth snaps once in the cold wind, the painted saint upon it cracked and flaking, the colors dulled by months of exposure. The saint's eyes are nearly gone, rubbed away by rain and sun, leaving pale hollows that stare nowhere. Each time the pole creaks, it sounds like a bone bending under weight. The soldier hears it and keeps walking. The air tastes of last night's wood smoke, trapped low by the cold, mixed with the wet sweetness of cloaks that never fully dry. When he breathes deeply, he can almost feel the fibers swell in his lungs. His own cloak hangs heavy on his shoulders, stiff where rain is frozen into it and thawed again. It scratches his neck, but he does not shift it. Movement costs warmth, and warmth is precious. He walks because the road asks it of him. War, he has learned, is mostly obedience to paths laid down long before banners and horns ever found them. Roman stones sometimes show through mud, worn smooth by centuries of passage. Dawn breaks without color, only a pale thinning of the dark, as boots press into mud hardened by frost. The sound is not heroic. It is a dull rhythm of leather and bone, the breathing of men who have slept sitting upright, cloaked stiff with last night's rain. A soldier walks to the center of this quiet procession, his name unspoken, his face hidden beneath a coif that smells of iron and old sweat. Somewhere ahead, a banner creaks on its pole, the painted saint cracking like dry earth. The air tastes of wood smoke and wet wool. He has learned that war is mostly this movement between moments, this long obedience to roads carved by other feet. Latin prayers murmur under breath, half remembered from childhood, while curses in rough dialect slip out when the straps bite skin. His pack carries barley bread, a rind of cheese gone sharp, a spoon worn smooth by years of scraping pots. The weight is familiar, almost comforting, like the pressure of a hand that never leaves. Villages pass as shadows, shuttered doors, dogs that do not bark, a bell rope swaying though no one pulls it. He notices these small signs more than the promises of battle. Waiting sharpens the eye. Waiting teaches him the shape of time, how it stretches thin as parchment, how fear seeps in through pinholes. At night, he fingers a cord tied at his wrist, a scrap from his mother's veil, frayed but intact. The road narrows into trees. Orders ripple forward, quiet as a breath. He does not know if tomorrow brings blood or another march, only that he will keep stepping until the waiting ends, or he does. The forest closes behind him like a door that remembers every hand that touched it. He steps on them without thinking, placing his foot where others have placed theirs, trusting the memory of the ground more than any command. Around him, voices murmur low, not in conversation but in fragments. A Latin prayer slips from one man's lips, words half remembered, syllables learned in childhood and never fully understood. Another mutters a curse in a rough dialect, sharp as flint, when a strap bites too deep into his shoulder. No one laughs. Laughter takes energy, and energy must be saved for what might come. The soldier's pack pulls at him steadily. Inside it a few things he owns now, a loaf of barley bread wrapped in cloth, dense and dark, a rind of cheese gone sharp enough to sting the nose when unwrapped, a wooden spoon worn smooth and thin from years of scraping the bottoms of pots. The spoon fits his hand perfectly. He has had it longer than the sword at his side. Its familiarity comforts him in a way he does not examine too closely. As they move, the world on either side of the road drifts past like a series of withheld gestures. A village appears and vanishes again. Doors shut tight, shutters barred, smoke rising from one chimney only. A dog watches from behind a fence, but does not bark. Its silence feels deliberate. A church bell rope sways slightly in the breeze, though no one stands near it. The bell itself remains still, its voice save for a time when it will matter. He notices these things more than he notices the talk of battle that sometimes ripples through the ranks. Waiting sharpens the eye. It teaches him to see what remains when nothing happens. He learns the shape of time by walking inside it, feeling how it stretches thin as parchment and then, without warning, grows heavy and resistant. Fear seeps in not all at once, but through small openings, like damp creeping through poorly laid stone. At midday they halt. Not for long, just enough to drink and shift the load. The soldier lowers himself carefully onto a rock rimed with frost. When he removes his helmet, steam rises from his hair. His scalp itches beneath dried sweat and salt. He rubs at it with stiff fingers, then stills his hand, listening. The quiet here is different from the quiet of night. It is watchful, alert. He takes out his bread and breaks off a piece. The crust resists his teeth. He chews slowly, letting the grain soften. Nearby, another man shares a slice of onion. It smells bright and alive. The soldier inhales it deeply, closing his eyes for a moment as memories of kitchens flicker unbidden. Hands dusted with flour, the sound of knives against wood, voices speaking of nothing important. When the order comes to move again, it is barely spoken. A gesture, a shift at the front of the column, and they are walking once more. The road narrows, drawing them toward a stand of trees. Branches arch overhead, their bare limbs interlacing like fingers. The light dims. Sound changes here, muffled by leaves and earth. The soldier reaches for the cord tied around his wrist. It is a thin thing, frayed almost to nothing, a strip torn long ago from his mother's veil. The cloth was once white. Now it is the color of old bone. He rubs it between thumb and forefinger, feeling each broken thread. It has traveled farther than she ever did. He does not know if she lives to count the days, to watch the moon wax and wane, to wonder where her son's footsteps have gone. He carries the cord anyway. It asks nothing of him but remembrance. As the trees close in, the column grows quieter still. Even the small complaints fade. Orders ripple forward in whispers, carried hand to shoulder. Somewhere ahead, a bird startles and lifts into the air, wings beating hard. The sound echoes too loudly in the soldier's ears. He adjusts his grip on his spear, feeling the familiar grain of the wood, the slight bend near the head. He does not know what tomorrow holds. It could bring blood and shouting, the sudden violence everyone pretends to be ready for. Or it could bring another dawn like this one, pale and reluctant, followed by more road, more waiting. He has learned not to hope for either. Hope sharpens disappointment. What he knows is this: he will keep stepping. One foot, then the other. He will follow the banner with its cracked saint. He will eat when told, sleep when allowed, stand when ordered. The waiting will stretch and contract around him, shaping him in ways he will only understand much later, if at all. Behind him, the road closes, marked only briefly by their passing. Mud fills in where boots pressed. Frost settles again. Soon there will be no sign they were ever here. Ahead, the forest darkens, swallowing sound and light alike. It feels like a door closing, not with finality, but with memory, as if the world itself keeps count of every man who has walked this way and carried a silence forward. Rain settles on the camp like a patient, deliberate visitor, seeping through canvas seams and collecting on spearheads planted into the sodden earth. Each droplet drums a soft, irregular rhythm, like the quiet heartbeat of the army itself, and in the spaces between the raindrops, one can hear the small human sounds: leather rubbing against leather, the scrape of a knife against a pot, the cough of a man whose lungs have carried too much damp air. The soldier sits on a low wooden stool, back straight, hand steady, oiling the boots that will soon walk yet another mile of mud and memory. His eyes, sharp even under exhaustion, move over his fellow soldiers, seeing them as both separate and inseparably joined in the slow march toward unseen battles. This is the other half of war, the part that is not sung in tales or embroidered in banners. Here, there is no clamor of swords, no heroic cries, only a measured obedience to routine and a quiet survival of bodies that have grown thin and pale with the demands of living constantly on the edge of danger. Food is sparse, a gruel of barley, thin and gray, stirred with a wooden spoon that has been worn smooth by years of scraping the bottom of pots. Its blandness is familiar, a marker of the rhythms of this strange, suspended life. Some men have traded their spoons for scraps of bread, for onions, for anything that reminds them that they still have agency, however small, in this ordered, rain-soaked world. Dice games occupy moments that are too brief to call leisure, played atop overturned shields, laughter rising and falling like wind over hills. Quickly suppressed, aware that joy must remain cautious here. Between the small clinks of bone on wood, the chaplain passes, incense clinging to his sleeves, reminding each soldier of sins they have yet to reckon with and those they have chosen to ignore. The smoke curls and lingers, sweet and choking, wrapping them all in a scent that mingles with wet wool and iron. The soldier inhales, and in the bitterness of it, he remembers the church back home, the voices of mothers and fathers, of bells ringing over cobblestones slick with rain. Waiting is fertile soil for stories. Veterans speak not of glory, but of the weather of battle. Rain turning the fields into quagmires, wind biting through armor, snow erasing footsteps overnight. They speak in low voices, their memories etched into their scars and the worn edges of their garments. The soldier listens intently, tracing the nicks in his sword with callous fingers, imagining the moment each was made, each a silent testament to a fleeting encounter with violence and chance. He sharpens his blade in quiet devotion. The axe steadies his hands and heart alike. Nearby, a boy no older than 16 braids a cord around his helmet, whispering the name of the saint with every knot, perhaps as a shield against fear, perhaps to claim some part of innocence that survives within him. Even in the wet monotony, there are small gestures that carry weight. A man offers another a piece of stale bread. A whisper of encouragement passes through the ranks. A nursemaid who has accompanied the army hums softly to herself, brushing damp hair from a fevered child's forehead. These moments are fleeting, yet they anchor the soldier to reality of human connection, reminding him that even amidst the endless wait, lives continue to intertwine and support each other in ways both fragile and profound. The storm presses in at intervals, wind rattling the edges of the tents and whipping at loose cloak ties. Soldiers huddle near fires that refuse to burn brightly, the damp sap and wet with suppressing flame like some unseen hand. Smoke rises lazily, curling and mingling with the drizzle, carrying the scent of wet leather, scorched iron, and the faint tang of sickness that permeates men who have stood too long in the rain. The soldier feels the cold seep into his bones, but he does not complain. He has learned to treat discomfort as a companion rather than an enemy, something that shapes endurance, sharpens patience. He observes the patterns of the camp, the way men move to avoid puddles, the careful distribution of rations, the subtle hierarchy in the placement of tents and fires. Even here, order persists amidst chaos, a testament to the discipline that allows survival. Each soldier has a place, a role, a set of invisible rules that govern not only life but expectation, hope, and fear. The soldier understands that to step outside these rules is to court misfortune, and he obeys them as one might honor a sacred ritual, mindful of every consequence. At night, the rain becomes a soft drum against canvas, lulling the camp into uneasy slumber. The soldier lies in his wet cloak, listening to the murmur of breathing, the occasional cough, the distant roll of thunder over hills he has yet to cross. He closes his eyes and recalls moments of home, the scent of hearth fire, the quiet presence of someone who mattered, the soft weight of a blanket on a cold night. In these recollections, he finds both comfort and grief, recognizing the distance that has grown between his past and present selves. Dreams are fragmented, often shifting between the familiar and the threatening. He sees fields of barley, then mud-choked roads. He hears laughter, then the clash of swords. The boundary between memory and fear blurs, and yet he wakes with steady hand, tracing the cord at his wrist, smooth now from countless nights of rubbing it for reassurance. It is a small talisman, a reminder of continuity, of identity preserved amidst the uncertainty. The dawn arrives slowly, washed in gray and silver. The rain tapers to drizzle, and the camp stirs with measured energy. Rain settles into the camp as if it belongs there, threading itself through canvas seams and dripping from spearheads planted like a field of iron stalks. The soldier sits on a low stool, rubbing oil into his boots, listening to the soft choir of coughs and murmured prayers. This is the other half of war, the half without motion, where men are arranged like stored tools, each waiting to be lifted or forgotten. The days are measured by small rituals. Porridge at dawn, thin and gray, stirred with the same spoon. Dice games played on overturned shields, laughter rising too loud, then breaking off. A chaplain moves among them, incense clinging to his sleeves, reminding them of sins that feel distant here, as if guilt itself is on campaign elsewhere. The soldier thinks of fields left unplowed, a wife or mother counting weeks by the phases of the moon. Waiting breeds stories. Veterans speak of past battles not as glory but as weather, something that came and passed, leaving scars like floodlines on stone. The soldier listens, tracing the nicks in his sword, each one a memory he did not earn. He sharpens the blade anyway, because the axe steadies his hands. Nearby, a boy no older than 16 braids a cord around his helmet, whispering a saint's name between knots. At night, the campfires shrink, their smoke pressed low by damp air. The soldier lies awake, staring at the dark inside his tent, hearing rats move through grain sacks. He learns the sound of his own heart. Battle remains a rumor beyond the hills, but waiting is certain, faithful as rain, teaching him how to endure without being seen. Orders are passed, movements are rehearsed, and the column prepares to continue its journey. The soldier adjusts his pack, checking straps and the condition of his boots, aware that each small preparation is a ritual in survival. He steps forward into the muddy road, boots sinking slightly with each step, the sound of movement absorbed into the wet earth, unrecorded and unremarked, yet necessary. The road leads forward, toward the unknown, carried with the weight of anticipation, the ghosts of battles not yet fought, and the silent presence of those already lost. The soldier moves among these shadows, aware of every sound, every movement, every breath. Waiting has honed him into a witness of life's minutiae, capable of seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary, the sacred in the routine. A crow lands on a fence post, dark and slick, feathers clinging with moisture. It tilts its head, regarding the soldier, and in that brief moment, he sees a reflection of his own vigilance and patience. The bird lifts suddenly, wings slicing the air, and the space it leaves behind feels hollow, resonant, as if it has carried away some of the weight of waiting itself. The soldier inhales, tasting the mingled sense of rain, earth, and smoke, and steps forward once more, each stride a continuation of the long, quiet work of endurance. Through the day, the camp passes slowly, each action deliberate. Water drawn from the stream, spears checked for splinters, fires tended, rations distributed. Soldiers exchange brief words, nods, or a glance, each communication carrying volumes of unspoken understanding. The soldier notes each gesture, each movement, each sound, committing them to memory as though the camp itself were a living story he is bound to preserve. By evening, the rain has ceased entirely, leaving the world glistening with wetness, each leaf, each stone, each blade of grass reflecting the dying light. The soldier sits once more, hands busy with small tasks, fingers tracing familiar grooves on his weapon, letting rhythm replace thought. The sun dips behind distant hills, shadows stretching long, and the cold begins to creep back, pressing into bones weary with both movement and stillness. Night falls, carrying with it a quiet solemnity. The soldier lies wrapped in a cloak, listening to the murmur of the camp, the whisper of the wind, the occasional distant sound of a hoof striking mud far along the road. He feels the weight of waiting not as a burden, but as a presence, something that has taught him patience, resilience, and a particular understanding of time. Battle remains a rumor beyond the hills, but waiting is absolute, faithful, and inescapable. In its embrace, he has learned to endure, to notice, to survive, and honor the lives and silent sacrifices of those around him. Morning bells drift over the plain, thin, wavering, carried by the air like fragile glass. Rain settles into the camp as if it belongs there, threading itself through canvas seams and dripping from spearheads planted like a field of iron stalks. The soldier sits on a low stool, rubbing oil into his boots, listening to the soft choir of coughs and murmured prayers. This is the other half of war, the half without motion, where men are arranged like stored tools, each waiting to be lifted or forgotten. The days are measured by small rituals. Porridge at dawn, thin and gray, stirred with the same spoon. Dice games played on overturned shields, laughter rising too loud, then breaking off. A chaplain moves among them, incense clinging to his sleeves, reminding them of sins that feel distant here, as if guilt itself is on campaign elsewhere. The soldier thinks of fields left unplowed, a wife or mother counting weeks by the phases of the moon. Waiting breeds stories. Veterans speak of past battles not as glory but as weather, something that came and passed, leaving scars like floodlines on stone. The soldier listens, tracing the nicks in his sword, each one a memory he did not earn. He sharpens a blade anyway, because the axe steadies his hands. Nearby, a boy no older than 16 braids a cord around his helmet, whispering a saint's name between knots. At night, the campfires shrink, their smoke pressed low by damp air. The soldier lies awake, staring at the dark inside his tent, hearing rats move through grain sacks. He learns the sound of his own heart. Battle remains a rumor beyond the hills, but waiting is certain, faithful as rain, teaching him how to endure without being seen. The sound is almost sacred, fragile and trembling, reminding those who listen that the world still holds rhythms untouched by the march of soldiers. Beneath the gray sky, a soldier stands at the edge of a halting column. Spear grounded, feet planted in soil softened by weeks of rain. The vibration of the bell travels through the soles of his boots, climbing through leg and spine, a reminder of distant stone floors where he once knelt, where prayers were measured in whispered syllables and the faint scrape of candle wicks against iron holders. They wait, not for a battle yet, but for the invisible signal that transforms expectation into action. Orders may arrive through a rider, a shout, a gesture, or they may not arrive at all. Clouds drift across the sun, shifting shadows over the plain in slow, deliberate motions, as if the heavens themselves are rehearsing patience. A messenger passes, riding fast through the mud, splattering the men with cold, dark water. His eyes are hollow, pupils reflecting nothing but the relentless gray sky. No one stops him. He carries messages meant to flow past him, as unheeded as the wind. The soldier adjusts the strap at his shoulder, easing a raw place where leather rubs flesh. He does not speak. He has learned that words are often wasted in the presence of waiting. Instead, he notices, as only one honed by hours of stillness can, the subtle motions of those around him. Hands twist frayed cords. Boots are cleaned in slow arcs. Fingers trace worn edges of shields. The ritual itself becomes a meditation, each movement a prayer performed in silence. Memory surfaces in this quiet, louder than any drum. He recalls his father's hands guiding him along a furrow, teaching patience in straight lines, the rhythm of labor, the understanding that progress comes slowly, with repetition and care. War is taught the same lesson but with sharper edges. The furrows are roads and the harvest is uncertain. Around him, men perform the same rituals of preparation and reassurance, oiling boots, sharpening blades, swapping water flasks. Small comforts, gestures meant not to impress but to endure. A raven lands on a nearby stake, head cocked as if observing, feathers slick with moisture from the morning dew. The soldier watches, not superstitious, but aware of the symbolism. The bird is patient, alert, waiting as he is, and he draws a strange solace from this shared presence. When it lifts again, air rushes to fill the space left behind, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked earth and feathers. In that rush, he senses the delicate, unrecorded moments that make up life on the road, the microcosm of waiting, hope, and fear compressed into each heartbeat. The day stretches with deliberate slowness. He notes the cadence of men breathing, the shift of weight from one foot to another, the way the wind bends tree branches and carries their scent, damp leaves, moss, wood smoke, and the faint metallic tang of iron. The senses sharpen when action is delayed. The waiting becomes a lens, revealing details often overlooked amidst noise and clamor. He notices a child peeking from a distant village window, a cow tethered to a post, the glint of a stream reflecting clouds overhead. These fragments of life persist beyond campaigns and sieges, reminders that the world does not pause for armies. Food is sparse but ceremonial. Bread, hardened by days of travel, is broken carefully. Cheese, salt-cured and sharp, is rationed with deliberate precision. Water is drawn from streams, filtered through cloth, the act itself ritualistic, grounding, a measure against chaos. Soldiers share small gestures of kindness, offer morsels, exchanging a nod, a brief word of concern. Each act becomes amplified in importance because the waiting magnifies everything. Silence is as meaningful as speech, observation as significant as action. Hours pass. The soldier stands often, leaning slightly on his spear, fingers tracing the iron, feeling the vibration of metal and wood through the palm. He thinks of battles not yet fought, of comrades already lost, of the fragile bridge between memory and reality. Dreams mix with recollection in these moments of suspension, and he carries them quietly, folding sorrow and hope into the cord around his wrist. It is a thin strip of cloth, frayed at the edges, yet solid in meaning. A link to a mother, a home, a life not yet consumed by the endless roads. As evening nears, the air shifts. Shadows lengthen, stretching across the plain, stretching across faces lined by fatigue and discipline. The soldier watches the interplay of light and darkness, noting how each movement alters perception, how each bend of the path or tilt of the head shifts understanding. It is in these quiet observations that he finds both preparation and refuge. Waiting is not passive. It is active engagement with the world in all its subtlety. A distant horn sounds briefly, a note that carries over the plain and is absorbed by the waiting earth. Not a call to arms, but a reminder, a punctuation mark in the slow narrative of this day. He adjusts his grip, feeling the steadiness and the familiar shape of spear and cord, acknowledging the inevitability of movement, while still honoring the necessity of patience. Around him, men respond similarly, subtle shifts, eyes flicking toward the source, muscles tensing for action that may or may not arrive. Night falls gently, the sky darkening without fanfare, stars beginning to pierce the dull veil of cloud. The soldier settles onto a low stone or fallen log, wrapping his cloak tightly, inhaling the scent of earth and damp, listening to the nocturnal life that continues unseen. The world around him is alive, yet silent, full of motion that does not impinge on the rhythm of his own measured waiting. Every breath is a ritual, every heartbeat a marker of survival and awareness. In the darkness, he reflects on lessons learned from the long hours of waiting. Endurance is not only physical but mental. Patience is not emptiness, but a form of understanding. Observation is as necessary as action. He recognizes a delicate interplay of fear and preparation, of memory and anticipation, and allows each to coexist within him, neither overwhelming the other. Dawn will come again, as it always does, and with it, the continuation of this measured journey. Steps will resume, orders will be issued, roads will stretch ahead into uncertainty. The soldier feels ready, not because he anticipates glory, but because he has absorbed the quiet power of waiting. Each moment of stillness has become a preparation, each hour of observation a rehearsal for what is to come. In this suspended world between motion and rest, between past and future, he carries the steadfast presence of his own enduring vigilance, moving forward when the time finally calls him to do so. Snow arrives without ceremony, fine as sifted flour, drifting down to settle on helmets, cloaks, and the frozen mud beneath boots. The camp becomes a quiet landscape of white and gray, each flake softening edges, muffling sound, and transforming familiar sights into something both fragile and strange. The soldier pulls his woolen cloak tighter around his shoulders, feeling the scratch of fibers against his neck, and watches the flakes dissolve on the warm backs of horses. Winter campaigns are cruel and relentless, yet there's a strange discipline in the way the cold dictates movement, attention, and care. Food is sparse, carefully rationed, each bite a measured pleasure. Salted meat, tough from drying and age, is gnawed slowly, each morsel counted, cherished, and absorbed with a mix of gratitude and resignation. The soldier trades a spare lace for an onion, its sharp scent a vivid contrast to the muted cold, a reminder of kitchens far away, of warmth and hands not yet weathered by campaigns. Frost creeps into joints, a subtle ache that penetrates even the briefest moments of rest. Men stamp their feet, shake out gloves, and hug themselves in silent rituals of survival. Waiting in winter is different. The cold slows the mind, stretches moments into long, elastic corridors of reflection. The soldier traces the lines of memory across these hours. Friends lost of frostbite, comrades sent home for injuries, the quiet absence of those who never returned. Each memory feels like a map of the body, pain and endurance marked in subtle lines and scars. He prays quietly, quickly, not out of devotion but from habit and a need for structure in the otherwise unstructured void of waiting. The camp is alive with small, muted gestures. A smith tends a tiny fire, hammering a piece of iron until sparks rise and die into the snow, the sound like small chimes ringing through the muted air. A boy mends the frayed straps of a fellow soldier's pack, lips pressed tight in concentration, fingers stiff and red with cold. Nearby, men share whispered stories, voices low, narratives of home and past campaigns, as if the telling itself sustains life and meaning amidst the snow and mud. The soldier's hands move habitually, performing small tasks that blend survival and meditation. He sharpens his knife, smooths leather straps, and traces a core around his wrist, worn from nights of clutching and rubbing for reassurance. It is a thread linking him to a past that feels both distant and present. A mother's touch, a home kitchen, the scent of wood smoke drifting through an open door. These fragments of familiarity sustain him in ways as vital as food or warmth. He observes the camp, noting the subtleties of human behavior under duress. Soldiers adjust their cloaks, shift their weight, exchange brief glances, all without speaking. Every gesture communicates endurance, attention, and an unspoken code of care. The snow softens movements, blunts sound, but also magnifies small signals. A hand extended, a nod, a subtle tilt of the head. In this stillness, every observation carries weight. Evening comes slowly, the sun barely a pale glow behind clouds heavy with the promise of more snow. Shadows stretch and merge with the white landscape, creating a sense of vast isolation. The soldier sits, hands moving over familiar tools, tracing grooves in the hilt of his sword, the texture of leather, the frayed cord on his wrist. Each sensation anchors him, providing a tether to reality in a world softened by snow and time. Sleep, when it comes, is brief and punctuated by the faint sounds of shifting bodies and the occasional cough. Dreams drift between memories of home and imagined marches, endlessly looping roads beneath snow-laden trees. He awakens to the cold pressing again, fingers clench around the cord, inhaling the crisp air that tastes faintly of iron horse and frozen earth. Even in rest, the waiting persists, shaping awareness, sharpening attention, cultivating patience. Morning arrives as a pale, hesitant light, reflected off snow and ice, blinding in its intensity, yet softened by moisture-laden air. Orders come, whispered through camp. Prepare, move, carry, endure. The soldier adjusts his pack and boots, feeling the familiar grind of leather and metal. The snow beneath each step compresses and springs back, and the sound echoes slightly in the silence, marking passage through a world both beautiful and unforgiving. The column moves again, steady and deliberate. Each stride is a negotiation with weight, cold, and fatigue. Waiting has transformed him, instilled a patient vigilance, honed senses that perceive subtle changes in wind, ground, and sound. Around him, men step in rhythm, a collective heartbeat against a white expanse. The road stretches endlessly, snow erasing previous marks, wiping clean the evidence of passage. He understands that survival lies not in speed or glory, but in endurance, observation, and the careful maintenance of life and habit. By midday, frost begins to thaw slightly, revealing the dark, wet earth beneath. The soldier pauses to rest, tracing patterns in mud with his boot, noticing the small creatures that stir beneath snow. A mouse slipping into a hole, the faint tracks of birds, the tremor of branches overhead. Each life, each motion, seems magnified against the stillness, reminders that existence persists quietly alongside the grand narrative of war. He inhales deeply, tasting the cold, the moisture, the faint smoke of distant fires, grounding himself in the physicality of survival. As evening approaches once more, the camp prepares for another night in the snow. Fires are lit carefully, smoke curling lazily, mingling with the frostbitten air. Soldiers tend to their gear, share small morsels, and murmur quiet stories. The soldier lies wrapped in his cloak, tracing the core around his wrist one last time, reflecting on the discipline, patience, and endurance demanded by this season of waiting. The snow continues to fall, softening the world, muffling sound, shaping silence into something almost sacred. In the quiet, he finds understanding. Waiting is itself a form of battle, shaping body, mind, and spirit with each measured moment, each breath taken, each step endured into the uncertain horizon. Between two ruined towers, the army pauses once more. The stones, the structures gnawed by centuries of wind, rain, and ivy, their surfaces pitted and scarred, bearing silent witness to the passing of generations. The soldier stands beside his comrades, leaning lightly on his spear, feeling the chill of iron seep through his gloves. The wind winds through arrow slits and broken windows, carrying a sound like breath through clenched teeth, and for a moment, the world is both intimate and immense. The ruined towers mark not just a place, but time itself, a threshold between what was and what is yet to come. The camp forms a careful pattern within the shadow of these relics, a temporary sanctuary carved out of necessity. Men repair their gear, sharpen blades, and tend to cloaks stiffened by frost and rain. The soldier assists the smith, holding a small iron sword steady over the coals as a hammer rings against it, each strike echoing faintly among the stones. Sparks leap and die, carrying the scent of hot metal and scorched wood into the damp air. The rhythm of hammer and anvil is a kind of music, a counterpoint to the silence and monotony of waiting. For a moment, the soldier feels anchored, connected to something tangible and enduring amidst the uncertainty. Around him, the camp hums with subdued life. A few men mend torn cloaks, their fingers stiff and red from cold. A boy distributes small portions of salted meat, speaking softly to those too tired or whether to speak themselves. Soldiers exchange whispered stories of children, animals, debts, and moments of quiet triumph from lives left behind. The soldier listens, absorbing the narratives as a dry sponge takes in water. These small fragments of human experience provide ballast, a tether to the continuity of existence beyond the immediate demands of military life. The soldier's own hands move automatically, performing rituals born of repetition, cleaning nails, scraping mud from leather, adjusting straps. Each motion is deliberate, a meditation that prepares him for the inevitable, whether that is continued marching or sudden battle. He feels a familiar ache in shoulders and knees, a persistent reminder of both labor and endurance. The core around his wrist, frayed and well-worn, carries the weight of memory, a mother's touch, a home long left behind, a world that continues in parallel to the one he currently inhabits. Food is sparse, and every meal is both sustenance and ceremony. Barley bread is broken carefully, chewed slowly. Dried fruit, toughened by age, is savored in small bites. Water is drawn from a nearby stream, filtered through cloth. The act ritualized into a rhythm that stabilizes the mind. Sharing occurs quietly, a piece of meat offered and gnawed, a small exchange of warmth or care. In the monotony, these gestures take on profound importance, establishing social bonds, preserving morale, and sustaining the fragile humanity that persists amidst the rigors of campaign life. The ruined towers themselves offer both shelter and meditation. The soldier walks between them, noting carved letters eroded by time, the grooves of arrow slits, the spaces where once wooden doors have decayed to nothing. He imagines the lives of those who occupied these walls. Families, soldiers, laborers, and priests, all caught in rhythms and stories that now exist only in the textures of stone and mortar. There is a quiet reverence in tracing fingers along roughened surfaces, acknowledging the persistence of human presence even as centuries dissolve the edges of memory. Evening arrives with muted glow, the light diffused through cloud and smoke, painting the camp in tones of gray and amber. Fires are lit, carefully attended, smoke curling lazily into the cold air. Men sit near them, performing small tasks or simply observing, their movements deliberate and measured. The soldier sits among them, handling his weapon, touching the core around his wrist, and breathing in the blended scents of wood smoke, wet leather, and cold earth. Each inhalation grounds him, each exhalation releases tension, and in the repetition of breath, he finds both stability and continuity. Night deepens slowly. Stars pierce the darkness, distant and indifferent, yet their presence evokes contemplation and humility. The soldier lies in his cloak, listening to the quiet, the rustle of leather, the faint scuff of boots on stone, the distant murmur of men tending equipment or speaking in hushed tones. The world of the ruined towers feels suspended, outside the reach of clocks and calendars, timeless yet ever-changing through the cycles of breath, firelight, and observation. In this prolonged stillness, the soldier reflects on lessons born of waiting. Endurance is not only a measure of physical capability, but also mental resilience. Patience is cultivated not in idleness, but in attention, in observing the minute and fleeting details of life and landscape. Vigilance is honed not through anticipation of immediate danger alone, but through constant awareness, through the quiet tracking of changes in light, air, and movement. Every moment spent tending equipment, observing the camp, or tracing the patterns of decay in the towers contributes to a readiness that is subtle, enduring, and profound. Sleep is fitful, punctuated by minor disturbances, the groan of timber under weight, the distant whinny of a horse, the whisper of wind against stone. Dreams drift between home and current reality, roads and villages, faces of comrades now gone or absent. He wakes with a hand on the cord around his wrist, tracing its worn texture, finding reassurance in its continuity, in its silent link to a world of remembered care and human connection. Dawn creeps over the horizon with delicate hesitation, washing the ruins in pale light that accentuates cracks, moss, and frost. Orders are passed, sometimes by whisper, sometimes through gesture, moving the camp into preparation for another day. The soldier adjusts his gear, checks his weapon, and steps carefully into the softened earth, boots sinking slightly, leaving faint impressions soon to be erased by wind or footfalls behind him. The march resumes slowly, deliberate, and steady. Each stride is a negotiation with fatigue, cold, and uncertainty. Waiting has transformed him, instilled patience, attention, and a deep awareness of the subtleties of both the environment and human behavior. Men walk in measured rhythm, a collective heartbeat across the field between ruined towers, and he moves with them, one presence among many, carrying the lessons of endurance, the memory of absent comrades, and the steady vigilance honed in long hours of stillness. By midday, the soldier pauses once more, observing subtle life amidst ruins, moss creeping along stone surfaces, small birds flitting between remnants of walls, the ripple of wind through tattered banners and broken branches. Each movement, each sound, carries meaning when the pace of life is dictated by waiting. The soldier draws in the sense of earth, fire, and metal, anchoring himself in the physical world even as imagination and memory weave the threads of narrative around him. Evening falls again, light fading into a muted palette of gray and gold. Fires are rekindled, food shared quietly, and men settle into routines honed by necessity and repetition. The soldier wraps himself in his cloak, tracing the cord once more, reflecting on the lessons of the day, the cumulative wisdom of patience, observation, and endurance. Snow may fall, rain may arrive, or wind may howl through the broken towers, yet the soldier remains a witness and participant, shaped and defined by the deliberate cadence of waiting and the small acts of survival and care that fill each moment. Night deepens, stars piercing through clouded skies, and the soldier drifts into sleep with the certainty of preparation and continuity, knowing that tomorrow will demand the same vigilance, the same patience, and the same attention to detail. The ruined towers, silent and steadfast, bear witness to both history and the ongoing rhythm of human endurance, and the soldier walks forward, guided by memory, awareness, and the subtle strength cultivated in the quiet hours between action and stillness. The final waiting comes before dawn, when the world is hushed and the line between night and day trembles in uncertainty. Men stand in ranks, armor creaking softly with every subtle shift, breath forming pale clouds in the chilled air. The soldier feels the earth beneath him, trampled flat by weeks of passing feet, the ground itself a quiet witness to every footstep, every pause, every whispered prayer. Somewhere ahead, hidden in the gray, an unseen enemy waits, a mirror to their own stillness, a reflection of patience and vigilance. He recalls the hours, the days, the long, endless stretches of marching with no conclusion in sight. Each mile etched into memory, each night spent listening to the faintest sounds, the drip of water from a tent, the scuttle of rats, the wind threading through trees. Waiting has carved him hollow and strong at once, taught him that endurance is a muscle to be exercised as meticulously as any other. The cord at his wrist is worn now, smooth from years of rubbing, a fragile but steadfast tether to a mother, a home, a past that remains intact even as the present demands all of him. The camp is alive with the subdued hum of vigilance. Soldiers shift weight from one foot to another, adjusting armor, checking weapons, exchanging brief nods. Movements are slow, deliberate, economical, preserving energy and warmth, maintaining readiness without exhaustion. The soldier notes each gesture, recording them in memory, understanding that these small acts are as vital to survival as the sharpness of a sword or the sturdiness of a shield. In the quiet, the human rhythm of the army becomes almost musical. The soft clink of metal, the swish of cloak, the rustle of leather, and the occasional whisper of a command or prayer. Time is measured differently in waiting. Hours stretch and contract unpredictably, sometimes elongating until the smallest sound seems immense, sometimes collapsing in a sudden surge of anticipation. He feels every heartbeat, a slow drum echoing in the chest, a counterpoint to the quiet of the world around him. Memories intertwine with reality. Visions of home kitchens, laughter of siblings, the smell of bread baking, interlaced with the smell of wet leather, the iron tang of blood from old wounds, the acrid smoke of previous fires. Life and death, past and present, mingle in a continuous, almost sacred rhythm. As the first hint of light softens the horizon, the soldier stands taller, aware of every detail. The shimmer of frost on blades, the way mist hangs low over fields, the distant outline of hills that may hold enemies, or simply the continuation of the road. His senses, sharpened by long hours of stillness, detect the minutiae others might miss. A bird taking flight, a subtle shift in the wind, the barely audible murmur of water in a distant stream. Each observation informs movement. Every detail a clue, a potential message from the world. He thinks of the men beside him, young and old, hardened and tender, each carrying their own stories, fears, and small rituals. A boy adjusts the cord of his helmet, whispering a saint's name. A veteran sharpens his blade with methodical precision. Another hums a tune almost forgotten, a song that binds him to home. The soldier draws comfort from this network of quiet discipline, understanding that camaraderie is as essential as strategy, that patience shared multiplies its strength. Morning deepens. The first horn sounds, low and resonant, its vibration traveling through ranks, through mud and frost, through body and bone. Not a call to immediate action, but a signal that the waiting is preparing to shift its form. Shields are lifted, armor adjusted, weapons tested, breaths drawn and held. The soldier steps forward, not in haste, but with deliberate caution. Every motion rehearsed in the countless hours of anticipation, every nerve alert yet calm. The landscape itself seems to participate in this suspended moment. Mist clings to the ground like delicate lace. Dew glistens on leaves. Birds stir, sensing movement without committing themselves. The air carries a mixture of earth, smoke, iron, and frost. He inhales deeply, tasting all of it, aware that each sensation, each subtle shift, may be the difference between survival and danger. Every sense is amplified, sharpened by hours of waiting, by the intimacy with time and space forged in silence. In this liminal hour, the soldier reflects on lessons learned from countless marches, countless pauses, countless nights spent listening to the world hold its breath alongside him. Waiting is not emptiness. It is a form of preparation, a shaping of mind, body, and spirit. Endurance, patience, observation, and subtlety are tools as vital as sword and shield. He understands that the battle, when it comes, will be swift, but the preparation, the quiet, invisible work of hours and days, is what allows him to move with confidence and awareness. Around him, subtle gestures ripple through the ranks. A hand tightens a strap, a boot shifts in mud, a cloak is adjusted. These minor movements are almost ceremonial, echoing the same care and discipline that preserved life through countless nights of rain, snow, and darkness. Every soldier becomes an instrument in this quiet symphony, a participant in a ritual that shapes not only survival but identity, resilience, and a capacity for reflection. The sun rises further, pale and tentative at first, then more insistent. casting light on a frost-strewn ground and a metallic sheen of armor. Shadows stretch, lengthen, shift. The soldier feels the anticipation building, not as panic, but as a readiness honed through repetition, through observation, through long communion with the uncertain world. He adjusts his stance, testing the weight of his spear, the balance of his shield, the grip of his boots on the frozen mud. Hours stretch again, moments marked by small, deliberate actions, adjusting a pack, sharing a morsel of bread, whispering a prayer, tracing the cord at his wrist. Each action, though seemingly minor, contributes to the readiness, awareness, and mental fortitude necessary for what may come. The soldier understands that vigilance is not just an act of defense, but meditation, a practice of presence, a shaping of the self to meet the world fully awake. As the horizon begins to glow, hints of light threading through the mist, he feels a subtle release of tension that comes with motion after waiting. The line begins to advance, each step measured, each breath synchronized with the rhythm of the ranks. The waiting loosens, but it does not disappear. It has become part of him, an invisible companion walking alongside, teaching him the quiet strength found in patience, observation, and the disciplined attention to the world. He moves forward one step, then another, through frost and mud, through mist and faint dawn light. The road stretches endlessly, the unknown ahead both a promise and a challenge. Around him, the soldiers move with him, a collective presence defined by discipline, endurance, and quiet understanding. Battle may come, or it may not. The outcome remains unseen. Yet the soldier walks on, carrying within him the cumulative knowledge of countless weights, countless small actions, countless breaths drawn in anticipation, each shaping his resilience and awareness for what is to come. By midday, the sun rises higher and the world awakens around them. Birds call, a distant stream glints, the wind shifts slightly, carrying scent and sound. The soldier moves with attention, noting each detail, integrating each signal into his understanding. The invisible enemy may be near or distant. It does not matter as much as his readiness, his patience, his learned ability to move with awareness. Waiting has taught him that vigilance is an act of communion with the world, a way to perceive what is not immediately visible and to survive what is inevitable. As afternoon approaches, fatigue and attention blend seamlessly, the soldier's body and mind working in unison, a product of training, habit, and countless hours of observation. Each movement, each breath, each glance contributes to an ongoing dialogue with the world, a dialogue forged in silence, patience, and endurance. The cord around his wrist, the familiar weight of spear and shield, the steady rhythm of feet on earth, all become extensions of self honed by waiting and presence. Evening nears once more, pale and cool, light fading into a spectrum of gray and silver. The soldier pauses briefly, noting the shadows, the glint of frost, the subtle movements in periphery, a bird lifting, a stream rippling, the faint murmur of wind through distant trees. These moments, seemingly insignificant, are the measure of awareness, the practice of vigilance, the cultivation of patience, endurance, and understanding that waiting has taught him. He inhales deeply, feeling the cold air fill his lungs, tasting the world, anchoring himself in presence, ready for whatever unfolds next. Night falls fully. Stars piercing the darkness, the world quiet except for the faint breathing of soldiers, the occasional distant howl, the rustle of cloak and armor. He wraps himself in cloak and cord, reflecting on lessons etched in body, mind, and spirit. Patience is strength, observation is power, endurance is resilience, and waiting is preparation. Whatever battle comes, he will meet it not only with weapon and armor, but with the accumulated wisdom of countless silent, suspended moments, each teaching the art of presence and the grace of readiness. The waiting will continue in memory, a companion through all steps yet to be taken, a teacher of resilience, fortitude, and the subtle poetry of a soldier's life between battles. The sun hangs low, a muted disk behind clouds heavy with the promise of rain, casting a dull light over the encampment where soldiers pause yet again. Between the folds of the rain, scattered tents, and mud-choked pathways, life persists quietly. A soldier sits near a smoldering fire, the coals glowing faintly through gray smoke. Warming hands are stiff and raw from weeks of travel. Around him, men move slowly, attending to the minutiae of survival, sharpening blades, tending to worn leather, repairing torn cloaks. The world feels suspended, as though breath itself is measured and deliberate, each inhalation a small act of endurance. The soldier rises, adjusting the strap of his pack, feeling familiar weight pressing against his shoulders. He moves among his comrades, noting the subtle gestures that signal readiness, fatigue, or a simple human connection. A nod, a shared glance, a slight shift in posture conveys volumes without words. Each soldier carries his own history, burdens, and silent rituals, and in this quiet, suspended camp, they coexist in fragile harmony, each waiting for the day's events to unfold. Rain begins to fall lightly, a whisper against canvas and leather, threading its way into seams, soaking cloaks and mail. The soldier inhales deeply, tasting the faint metallic tang of wet iron, the earthy scent of mud, and the sharp aroma of rain-dampened herbs pressed into pouches for cooking. He closes his eyes for a brief moment, letting memory drift. The warmth of mother's hands, the smell of bread baking in a distant kitchen, the laughter of a sister long gone. These recollections are fleeting, fragile, yet they tether him to a world beyond the endless roads and pauses that define the life of a soldier. Movement resumes slowly across the camp. Horses shift, hoofs pressing into the softened ground, flanks steaming in the cool air. The soldier walks to check his own mount, running hands over the wet mane, feeling the warmth beneath the coat, listening to its steady breath. Around him, men prepare rations, barley bread sliced carefully, dried meat portioned with precision, water poured into cups and ladled into hands. Each action is ritualistic, deliberate, a quiet assertion of control in a world governed by unpredictability and waiting. He takes a moment to inspect his sword, the blade dulled by repeated use and the constant demands of travel. Fingers trace nicks and scratches, each a silent story of encounters past. The metal smells faintly of iron and oil, and in the rhythm of cleaning and sharpening, he finds a small meditative focus. Nearby, a young soldier braids a cord around the hilt of his own sword, whispering a saint's name between knots. Tradition and superstition intertwine in these small acts, providing solace and continuity, a sense that the unseen can be persuaded or honored through careful attention. The day moves with a slow, deliberate cadence. The soldier observed the interplay of light and shadow, rain and mist, noting the subtle movements of men and animals, the faint ripple of water in distant streams, the pattern of clouds across the sky. Waiting sharpens perception. It trains the senses to notice what might otherwise pass unnoticed. He hears the shuffle of a boot, the quiet scrape of a rope, the softness of water running through a channel, and catalogues each sound mentally, a map of the camp's life in motion and stillness. Meals are shared with quiet gratitude. The bread, hard and dense, is broken into small pieces. Dried meat is chewed slowly, deliberately, each bite an exercise in endurance and ritual. He exchanges a piece with a comrade, a gesture that is as much about human connection as sustenance. Conversation is minimal, mostly murmurs, soft prayers, or the occasional chuckle quickly stifled. These small sounds are amplified in the quiet, underscoring the presence of life, resilience, and patience. By midday, the rain intensifies, streaming through canvas flaps, running in rivulets across the camp, pooling in worn depressions in the ground. The soldier adjusts his cloak and hood, watching as water gathers and drips from branches, iron, and leather. He notes the tactile sensations, the chill of damp fabric against skin, the slickness of mud under boots, the resilience of materials that have endured countless miles. Each observation is a layer of awareness, reinforcing both vigilance and the meditative quality of long hours spent between action and anticipation. The afternoon stretches with unhurried rhythm. Soldiers move among tents, checking supplies, repairing gear, tending to minor injuries. The soldier participates in these rituals, finding in repetition a grounding focus. He traces a cord around his wrist, worn from constant touch, feeling each frayed thread, letting memory and reflection intertwine with the present moment. The cord connecting the home, to family, to a life paused but not forgotten, a delicate tether maintaining identity amid displacement and uncertainty. Evening approaches, light softening into gray and silver. Shadows lengthen, merging with the contours of tents and mud, creating a world of muted shapes and quiet textures. Fires are tended carefully. Smoke rises in delicate spirals, carrying the scent of ash, wet wood, and iron. The soldier settles near one, hands close to the warmth, watching sparks drift upward and vanish. Around him, men share whispered stories, fragments of memory and hope, each narrative a small act of resistance against the overwhelming quiet and monotony of waiting. Night arrives gently. Stars piercing the dim veil of clouds. The world hushed except for the soft breathing of soldiers, occasional rustle of fabric, and distant, indistinct calls of nocturnal creatures. The soldier lies wrapped in cloak and cord, reflecting on the day, its movements, its silences, its rituals, and its small moments of connection. He feels the accumulated weight of endurance, the subtle shaping of patience, and the quiet sharpening of perception. Waiting has become an act of meditation, of preparation, and of quiet acknowledgement of life in all its fragile, persistent forms. In the stillness, he contemplates the horizon, distant hills softened by rain and mist. The road stretches beyond sight, uncertain and unending. He inhales the cool air, tasting earth, iron, and damp vegetation, grounding himself in the present while allowing memory to drift. He remembers those lost, those left behind, the lives intertwined with his own in ways invisible but unbroken. Each breath, each heartbeat, each attentive gesture contributes to the readiness required for whatever may come, for the eventual return of motion and confrontation. Hours pass in quiet reflection and minimal movement. The soldier maintains awareness, noting the subtle changes, the shift of clouds, the approach of wind, the faint sound of animals stirring in hidden places. Vigilance becomes a meditation, observation, an act of communion with the world. The cord on his wrist, the texture of leather, the steady weight of armor, the familiar feel of sword in hand, all combine to create a continuity, a sense of self-maintained amid uncertainty. Dawn returns slowly, tentative at first, casting pale light over the wet camp. Soldiers stir, adjusting cloaks, checking weapons, preparing to resume movement. The soldier rises, aware of each footstep, each movement, each breath, carrying within him the accumulated knowledge and quiet strength forged in the long, suspended hours of waiting. The cord, the sword, the armor, the familiar ritual of small actions, they are all instruments in the continued practice of endurance, patience, and presence. By mid-morning, the camp begins to stir fully, and the soldier walks with measured, deliberate steps, attuned to every detail of the landscape, the weather, the movement of comrades, the subtle hints of the environment. Rain, mud, wind, and stone all become part of the living world. He navigates with attention and respect. Each moment is an opportunity to engage fully, to practice patience, to maintain readiness. Even as movement resumes and the march continues, waiting remains companion, shaping perception and resilience. The soldier has learned that patience is strength, observation is power, and endurance is a continuous, conscious practice. Every step forward carries with it the memory of suspended hours, the weight of preparation, and the quiet knowledge that survival and presence are cultivated in moments both grand and infinitesimal. As dusk falls once more, the camp settles, fires glowing against the encroaching dark. Soldiers move with careful attention, tending to the rituals that maintain life and readiness. The soldier lies wrapped in cloak and cord, reflecting on the accumulated lessons, the sacredness of routine, the meditative quality of endurance, the resilience built through vigilance. Waiting, he understands now, is not absence, it is presence, it is preparation. It is a slow, deliberate cultivation of strength, perception, and quiet courage. And as the night deepens, he carries this knowledge into sleep, ready for whatever tomorrow and the road ahead may bring.